All right, we are going to talk about the pre-steps. Now that you're dedicated in, you're committed, let's learn some piano, and we have to get a few things set out of the gate. The first is an instrument. You need something that you can touch and play, right? So I have a keyboard right here, and that's the first thing we'll talk about. Keyboard versus piano. Here's the pros and cons of both. When you talk about a keyboard, they're a wide price range, especially if you add in used. There's a wide set of features that you can have with a keyboard, and they don't take up a lot of space. They're very portable. You can take them around. They can sound like whatever you want. If you want to get into production, they're good for that. What are the cons? They're never going to quite feel right compared to a piano. You have to plug them into a wall. Potentially, if you don't have one with built-in speakers, you may have to get some accessory speakers. And it may not sound the best just because of the type of keyboard. Now, keyboards have gotten a lot better, so you can get keyboards that sound really, really close to a piano, sometimes even better than most pianos. But that's not necessarily going to be the case, especially for your first keyboard. The price range that I'd say that's probably good to look at is anywhere between like $500 to $1,000. You probably don't want to go over $1,000 for your first keyboard, and you probably don't really want to go under $500. And again, this is going to be United States and in the next few years, because who knows, maybe the cost will even go up in the next few years. Everything's crazy right now, you don't need me to tell you. That's going to be keyboard land. How about, one last thing about keyboard land, brands. If you stick in the pool of respectable brands, I have a Roland right here, an FP90, but there's Yamaha, there's Kurzweil, there's Roland, there's Nord technically, although good luck finding one for less than $1,000. And there's all of these. There's Casio. All of these brands kind of give you a little bit of extra confidence for buying, but ultimately there's going to be no substitute for going out and experiencing it. If you have a specific keyboard question, just throw it out in the comments and I probably can answer it. Let's talk on the other side, the piano. It's just kind of funny that I put it second because, this is about piano, but whatever. So the piano, the pros are it's going to feel exactly right because that's the instrument that you're going to want. It also may cost significantly less than a keyboard. There's a lot of used pianos, especially if you're in the United States. People are trying to get rid of pianos all the time. Now, that's where the pros start to diminish. There's only one more, which is because it feels right, your technique is potentially going to be quite a bit better if you're playing on piano versus a keyboard. On the cons, you're going to have the fact that you're going to need a moving crew to just get into your house. It's going to take up a lot of space, especially if it's a grand piano. It's going to take up a ton of space. You're not going to be able to turn the volume down when you are practicing at maybe 1 in the morning and you don't want to wake up anybody else in your house. Also, it's going to require regular maintenance to stay in tune. Now, none of this stuff is a deal breaker. Like, you can probably get away with tuning a piano only once a year, sometimes even less if you have a really stable piano and it's in a room that the temperature doesn't go like crazy. But it's all things to consider. I want to throw this in real quick. I want to talk about features that you want to have on a keyboard and things you should look for in a piano. So for a keyboard, weighted keys would be very high up on my list. Is it necessary? No, it's not necessary. But is it beneficial? Absolutely. Built-in speakers as well. This used to be one of those things you avoided because they added to the cost. And in general, keyboards that had built-in speakers also were terrible. But that's no longer true. So I would highly recommend that. Other things that are nice if they're built in is, does it come with a pedal? Because you'll need that to do sustained notes. Does it have a keyboard stand? These are all things that you should consider. Does it have a stool, an adjustable stool, right? All things to consider on the keyboard side. How about on the piano side? I think the main one is you want to have some basic tuning app on your phone when you're going to check out a piano. And you want to make sure that it's close to being in tune. Because even if it sounds right, but it's maybe a half step or even a whole step outside of what the notes are supposed to be, it doesn't matter how good a tuner you have. Most likely the piano will not be able to come back into full tune. So that's a big one. Make sure at least that sustain pedal works. Who cares about the other pedals, to be honest? And then make sure every note plays. You don't want to go into having a piano with a ton of work. Can there be little fixes done? Absolutely. If you have somebody who you know personally who does work on pianos, you certainly can bring them along. But just wanted to throw in these 2 really quick ideas before we move on. All right, back to the main video. That's on the getting an instrument. And I would highly recommend, I have started students where they will not get an instrument and start lessons, and then they'll be playing on like a keyboard app on their iPad. Please do not do that. That, I think, is a huge, huge mistake, especially if you're paying a teacher. An average teacher, you may be spending anywhere between like $200 to like $400 a month potentially on lessons. So you can easily save up for a keyboard or a piano within 2 months, 3 months, 4 months of lessons. So instead, save your money, buy an instrument. All right, you got your instrument, we're assuming. You need to set some goals. Now, what type of goals do I want you to set? I think really it comes into 2 categories. The first is there some longer term focus that you're trying to shoot for? Or is it just generally, hey, I want to learn piano because it's cool? Do you want to play, a specific song like Interstellar or Golden Hour or Rushy? Or do you have like a specific skill in mind? You want to learn how to improvise? You want to learn how to play jazz? You want to learn to read? All of these things can really help facilitate some enthusiasm and some ability to stick to what you're doing. And that kind of leads into the second part is you want to have some idea of a goal, and then you want to have some idea of a plan to actually get there. And what's that going to look like? It's going to look like consistency with practice. Does that mean that you have to practice hours and hours every day? No, it could be 5 minutes. It could be 10 minutes. But that would be the main 3 pre-steps before you even get on this course is get an instrument, set some expectations of what you're looking to do in the future, and then get yourself a practice plan, some consistency. Again, I would recommend super low stakes to begin with, like 5 minutes a day of practicing piano. Like that doesn't sound like a lot. You can get a lot done in 5 minutes. On the other hand, if you start super nebulous and you're like, I'll practice as much as it takes, then what you're going to do is you're going to wear yourself out the first day, and then you're going to not want to practice the next day. It just happens. I've been around enough to know this stuff happens. That kind of ties up the introduction to this whole series. Next up, we're going to go into some piano specifics, and we're going to start diving into what really it takes to understand this instrument and really thrive in learning.